Kevin, what made you want to do the HSC?
Really just to get to graduate through Year 12 and then to help follow like expectations really, and to just since I can, I should. That's what I felt to do it. But then also just my parents told me to. I chose 3 unit maths, English advanced, biology, chemistry, and ancient history.
What's your overall view on the HSC?
I think it's a good thing. You have to kind of, my viewpoint is you have to stratify students somehow. You want the right students going into the right subjects at university, and I think it's a good way of, separating them and, making sure that you're getting the right people for the job, I suppose.
I think the HSC is a reasonably good objective way of assessing student performance in examinations. What we do with the HSC marks could be a little bit more constructive, but the HSC itself, it's quite a deep course in many areas. Perhaps it could do with a little bit more breadth.
What is your experience with the HSC, would you say?
As a student or as a teacher? Or both? Both. As a student, it was tough, but my personality is I function very well with stress. Yes, I get stressed out, but my thought process is, look, it's going to get done, I've got to do it anyway, so there's no point whining about it. So I got through the HSC pretty stress-free. Managed my time pretty well. My one big problem was that back in my day, maths was compulsory, and I was never good at it. So that took up the lion's share of my study time, just simply because I was failing and I needed to pass. But aside from that, it was good. I probably didn't do as well as I should have, based on my ability.
At the beginning, the stress, like the pressure as well, it was a little bit high, I guess, because at the start I would have gone to tutoring and a lot, through like for about 4 hours.
4 hours,
like maybe twice a week, sorry. And then but then later on, around end of year 11, something like that, my results were it's not as high as people expected, so we stopped tutoring because I thought that it was a waste of money.
I think that our education system only evaluates one type of sort of intelligence or skills, and I think that too much emphasis is placed on a number which, in all honesty, after 2 years won't mean anything. And whilst it might take a few more years of hard work, if you don't perform well in years 11 and 12, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go to university. It just means that you have to look at different pathways. And I think a lot of schools place too much emphasis on going straight to university after year 12, which, even though I did that, is certainly not the only option I considered.
From a teaching perspective, yes, it's tough, but life's tough sometimes. I think it actually sets you up to face much greater challenges. The media makes a big song and dance about the pressures of the HSC, but they fail to talk about, writing theses and doing master's degrees and essays in university and all this sort of stuff, which is 10 times harder and probably, much more important. But I think because they feel, the kids are a little bit younger, that it's placing undue stress, whereas I think it's setting them up pretty nicely for, the world outside, really. The big issues I have with education in New South Wales and Australia is that there's this sort of time around year 9 and 10 where the kids just kind of float about. There's no real end goal, yeah.
Why do you think parents do put a lot of pressure on some of the students?
I think just because, especially from the perspective of private schooled kids.
Yeah.
I know I felt this a little bit, certainly from my mother anyway, was the fact that a lot of parents make big sacrifices to send their kids to schools like here, and feel that unless the student has, got 95 plus for their HSC, then their investment is wasted.
I think that, of course, every family is different, and I think that when parents put pressure on their students to perform well, what people often forget is, of course, it's only because the parents want what's best for their child. Every parent wants to see their child go to university and succeed.
But they shouldn't be worried about what your achievement's going to be. They should only be concerned with how hard you're trying. They should be proud of how hard you're trying, just as you're proud of yourself in how hard you're trying.
Kids who went through depression but couldn't get enough help. Thankfully, I haven't felt that, so I'm not really sure how that feels.
Yeah.
But I've heard very sad stories about how they suicide and so on because of the stress.
People tend to get depressed when they fear failure. Not so much failure explicitly, but failure as far as they're not going to do as well as they'd hoped or as well as they had expected. And that can be quite confronting for students, and that can cause quite a major shift in their mindset.
I have. One of my good friends, he bombed out, but, and I don't like to say this too often, he's actually very successful now. He runs his own internet site, which is global, and doing great things, just simply because he was always smart. He was just very lazy, but he had the tactical know-how and the passion to follow up on this particular subject, and now he's very successful. So I don't like telling the kids that, because it's basically sending the message that you don't have to do well in your HSC. But it's not. It also just says that it's not the end of the world if things go horribly wrong, because he managed to find a way around it.
Really care about your HSC?
Yes. Certainly when you first get into the private sector or public sector, wherever you want to work, fresh out of uni or fresh out of school, then yes, it's probably the first thing they look at. Certainly, I'd like to think that in the case of myself and this job that I'm working at, I don't think they would have taken too much notice of it. I think they would have looked at my actual work experience and said, okay, he's done this, he's done that, great. In fact, even university transcripts, I think, probably play more of a role than HSC marks would.
When you go for a job interview, you're going to be employed on how you perform in the interview more than anything. I think people will take an HSC with a little bit with a grain of salt. That they'll use that perhaps in some way, but they want to see the body language of the person who comes in. They want to see how they communicate with the people on the interview panel. They want to see whether they can answer tricky questions. They want to see what the real person is behind the HSC mark.
Do you know anyone who's really benefited from the HSC?
Me?
Oh, definitely. Look, there's been some great students that have come through schools, and this school for sure. I've taught many students who have done really well at school, but it's always because they're good students and they work very hard. The ones who work very hard are the ones who go on to be successful. They go on to win university medals. They go on to follow careers that are really meaningful careers. And yes, that does occur without doubt.
What advice would you have for students currently doing the HSC?
The best piece of advice is you just got to plan ahead, planning your time. Open up a dialogue with your teachers, because especially in Year 12, they've got all the time for you guys, and that's going to get you through, I think.
Stay calm, definitely. It's not going to help you if you're stressed. It's just a waste of time.
The best advice I think that I ever give is just to give everything your best shot and be satisfied with that. You try as hard as you can, you want to improve as much as you can, and regardless of whether you achieve at a high level or a less than high level, you're happy with that because you've given it your best shot. The ones who are successful in life are the ones who have the good habit of a good work ethic consistently, daily, in everything they do, whether it's schoolwork, relationships or whatever. They're the ones who are happy to work at any problems they encounter, and they're the ones who constantly come up with a solution that's satisfactory.